So if you want to be a Republican, have $1 million because they will help your tax plan. But everybody else, they hurt you. Sherman D. Manning, I'm going to sign off for now. We'll be back in 10 minutes because of the police stop. Sherman D. Manning, get my book, The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice. It is an awesome book. The book can make a difference. It's not just about O.J. It's also about the no-J's. Well, let's try to see if we can keep this going. But my voice may drop down some because I'm going to have to lay this down. But this is a great country, and all of us can come together, and we can continue to make it better. Again, excuse the dropping of my voice, but I had to do something, and I have to do something that I would not be able to do with the machine to my mouth. This is our podcast. We're coming live out of Los Angeles. To your friends and your families to start tuning in to the podcast. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get better. Right now, people are emailing me from around the country telling me that they have received this podcast and that they are enjoying it. And I want to know, is anybody out there listening tonight? If you are listening, text me. Text me right now. If you're listening to this podcast, and if you think this podcast has any substance, send me an email. ShermanDManning@gmail.com. ShermanDManning@gmail.com. Send me an email and tell me that you're listening right this very minute. I want some of you all to tell me you're listening to this podcast. Go to ShermanDManning@gmail.com and send me an email and let me know that you heard us. Listen to me. We have got to start thinking. An uninformed person, you can do anything for them. You can do anything to them. You can sell them a dream and they'll buy it. Hook, line, and sinker. But when a person is a thinking person, when a person is well informed, they won't go for what we call the okie doke. And trust me when I tell you, there are people who are running for office in this land right now, such as Donald, who will okie doke you. They will convince you of things that are not true. They will have you thinking things that really don't even make any sense if you think about it. I have always strived to be informed. If nothing else, I want to know what's going on. And the way you find out what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, you watch the news. That's first and foremost. Watch the news. Figure out a way to watch it on your smartphone or whatever. Get you some news every day. Stay informed. Secondly, research. Research the things that you see on the news because there are things called media bias. And sometimes even when the media is trying to be fair, their reporting is still lacking. And one of the things that has always fascinated me is how you can be watching the news on one channel and turn the TV to another channel, and almost simultaneously sometimes totally simultaneously, both CBS, NBC, and ABC will be showing the same story simultaneously. That's because of something called the Associated Press, etc., and the outlets from which they receive their media. But if you want to be informed, sometimes ABC, CBS, and NBC are not enough. Sometimes you have to dig, you have to pry, you have to look on the internet, you have to talk to people, you have to brainstorm, and you'll come up with better solutions than you will by simply believing every little story that you see on the news. But the news is a starting point at minimum. At least if you watch the news, you're able to have some perspective on what's going on in this country. And so I suggest that every person read the news, watch the news, and read the newspapers, etc. I am Sherman D. Manning. Again, I am encouraging you, especially those of you concerned about politics, especially those of you who have been watching the FX series, The People versus O.J. Simpson. and make very darn sure that you understand what is going on. Again, let me tell you, the rich get richer in this country, but the poor get prison. And the good thing about being in America at such a time as this is that it is very easy to get informed. We have a thing called the internet. We also have all kinds of resource data that we are able to dig into and read and look and analyze and scrutinize what is going on in this country. And so I'm going to ask you again, get the book, The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice. Attorney Bob Blazier, real name Robert Blazier, but we all call him Bob. Attorney Bob Blazier was on the O.J. Simpson trial with Johnny Cochran, F. Lee Bailey, and others during the double homicide trial, in which O.J. was acquitted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. Probably the only black man in the 20th century who has ever gone to trial alleged or accused of murdering 2 white people and walked out of the courtroom a free man. If you want to deal with that, if you want to understand why O.J. being a black man could do what he did, and as some think, got away with murder, read my book, The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice. Get it at your local bookstores. Get it at Amazon.com. Ethan Couch, I cover him in the book. And Google him. You'll see who he is. E-T-H-A-N, Couch, like a couch you sit on, C-O-U-C-H. I also cover the Menendez brothers. I was housed, unfortunately, because some people say it like it's a badge of honor or something to brag on. But I was housed with Eric Menendez for the better part of 7 years. We worked together every day. I got to know his case. I got to know him. And he's a narcissistic egomaniac and a sociopath. So is his brother Lyle. I got to know him. Served about 2 years with him. I put that in the book. Charles Manson. What a man. What a man. I met Charles Manson at Corcoran State Prison, and we had a loud, obstreperous, bellicose argument. I have that in the book. I've met so very many psychopaths, some of whom you know from the media, some of whom perhaps you never heard of. I met Rod Alcala, first name Roderick, last name Alcala, A-L-C-A-L-A. He was on a game show years ago, and then he ended up raping a bunch of women and then taking photos of them after he raped them. Met him, know him. In fact, he's right almost next door to Charles Manson in Corcoran. Andrew Luster, met him. Google Richard Gellner, G-E-L-L-N-E-R, in the Georgia prison system. Met him, know him. So what I did with these sociopaths is I studied them like a book. I studied them like a science project so that I could understand why they do what they do and what it's all about. I have come to the conclusion that prisons are definitely not the answer. In some sense, at times they are a necessary evil, but they're definitely not the answer to the problems that we face in this country. Because what happens, and I've said this consistently, is if you lock up a man who has a small amount of time in prison, let's say, 2 or 3 years, and for a guy serving a life sentence, even 5 years seems like a small amount of time. So if you lock up these people who have these small sentences, what happens is the environment, the spirits, the psychological atmosphere of the prison changes them for the worse. And because of gang influences and initiations and race wars and all kinds of things that go on in prison, and I deal with the prison subculture in my book. If you want to learn about the subculture of prison, examine that subculture, read the book, The Truth About O.J. Simpson, Race, Class, Money, and Justice, by me at Amazon.com and local bookstores. But what happens is, once you let a young man spend 4 or 5 years around the people in prison who have life and will never get out, by the time they get through with them, the person with the light sentence is no more good for anything. They're ruined for life. And many of them, hi Judy. Is that Judy? Come here. I just want to say hello to you.